time of year, this fall, we live in a really awesome, beautiful place, don't we? We have the Cascade Mountains, and then in the valley floor we have all the changing of the leaves. It's a pretty gorgeous time, especially on these crisp days where the air is thin and the spirit feels thick. Those leaves are changing brilliant color and they are ablaze, and I think they call our hearts to awaken as well. This week in Oregon School, Episcopal School Chapel, as one of the chaplains, we celebrated All Saints Day and then All Souls Day. And for our upper school, we asked all of the faculty and students, so over 400 plus people, to contribute to names of those people who have died, that they wanted their names read during the chapel service. And we've done this before, but we sat in our All Saints Chapel. The names were read and it lasted seven minutes. That's a really, really long time. And we all sat there as names, people's lives, their kindness, and the things that made them spark, and their ideals, and what we loved about them was washing over us like a tides that were just coming in and in. It was 7 minutes. And we were sitting there. And I can tell you that the 13-year-olds and the 45 and the couple 60-year-olds, we all knew that the air was really thin. That people who had died were with us as in our remembrance of them. And that the spirit was thick. And I could have asked any single student, any single adult during our All Saints Chapel about, does death really separate us from relationship? And they all would have said no. It was that palpable. It was that permeable to two worlds, the earth and the heaven, the spiritual world and this world. We were engaging with one another. The Celtics call this the thin place. We talk about this quite a bit. That thin place. The air is thin. The spirit is thick. And I've learned over the years of being a spiritual person that when I experience these thin places and these thin times, that my heart gets tender and it breaks a little bit. It's usually in a place of pain and breaking, where I know that heaven is around. And I feel more courage and more bravery to accomplish God's prayer, a kingdom come, a will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Did you hear Jesus talk about this prayer in the gospel that Father Robert just read? I didn't hear it the first time I read it, and it's actually taken me a couple years to hear the Lord's Prayer, that God's will be done here on earth in these blessings, blessed are, and the woes. Jesus says, he starts in his own context in Palestine, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of heaven." He then a little bit later says, "Woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation." You know, the economic divide that Jesus was speaking to in his era, between the rich and the poor, between the have-nots and the haves, this material and economic and privilege divide is by no means any less narrow today than it was then. It's this like age-old concern and problem and cry that this is not how God intends the world or wants the world to be. Jesus is saying, to make God's dream for this world possible, I need your help. We need to help each other create equity, to create a place, a people, a community where people's basic needs are all met. And this happens when we see ourselves in a greater sense, in a spiritual sense, that yes, our money, our resources, our time, our privileges, our friends, on and on, all that we have are a repository, a storehouse to be shared and not a scarcity to hoard. Separation between heaven and earth, God and us. The separation between finances, between one people and another people or person, emotional distance between people, spiritual distance is not God's dream for this world. Jesus says, if anybody strikes you on the cheek, what's the response? Yes, you know it. You know it. And I've often misunderstood this. And I think people still do today. So I just want to say that when somebody, again, this is Jesus saying these words in his time. And so when somebody was struck on the cheek, right, it's normally the person of power. That person, whoever is doing the action, has power. And the person who is receiving doesn't. And normally they would quiver back. But what does Jesus say? He says,
turn the other cheek.
Do you hear that differently? Stand up. Don't quiver. You don't need to quiver. This is heaven. Heaven is happening here. You have worth. Stand up and give the other cheek too. This is a thin time. This is a thin place. And in those times, we find our courage to respond, to make it be on earth as it is going to be in heaven. In the United States, you're familiar with the turn the other cheek with the nonviolent, the resistance movement. And it comes from this belief. It all stems from this belief that heaven is close at hand. Find your strength in that. God's dream is a good dream. And this is how we transform the status quo. This is how we become transformed ourselves. Our presiding bishop often talks about God's dream for the world, and our work is to be loving, life-giving, and liberating. And I think it's easier to do when we're in those thin places. This is also a time of year that we talk about stewardship. So think about the repository, the storehouse, your resources. And children alike and adults and young adults who have spoken to us last week, we are all asking for you and us to give, because we are trying to create a community. We are trying to create a community in which anybody who walks through these doors is truly welcome, regardless of what they believe, what they think politically, but their race, how much they earn, where they live, their age, that everybody is welcome. And that they're welcome in this worship. That you can worship freely. How you need to worship here. And that we need you And I need you to learn how to be a disciple. I don't do it by myself. And that we are trying every single day together to respond to the needs of the world. And I can't respond to all the needs of the world, and Mary can't respond to every single needs of the world, but I can respond to what I feel passionate about. She can respond to what she is passionate about. David can respond to what he's passionate. We need each other each and every day to respond to the needs of the world. This is the community that we're trying to create, a community that is heaven on earth. And somebody and her parents are making a very real gift and contribution out of their repository today to make this prayer real for them. Out of their repository, their time that's taken to do baptismal preparation and time to understand this Christianity thing and St. John's community, and their talents that they clearly have, they will be presenting Naomi to be baptized. And Naomi is giving the most vulnerable and valuable gift of all, and that is her life to God. And people all around the world, the globe, are getting baptized today, All Saints' Day. So as she is saying yes, and other people are saying yes to God, here I am, may it be. She is being vulnerable, and her parents are being vulnerable to the impossible possibility that God is really here. God really is who makes our life abundant. And that's our grounding. In grace, baptism, we already know that she is holy, and she is a huge blessing to this community already. But we baptize, even though we might have questions, we baptize because we want her to experience the thinning, the wonder of the change of leaves, the path of gratitude, the courage to stand up, because she knows she's deeply loved, and every single person she encounters is deeply loved. And we want her to know that this gift of love is with her through all the changes of her life. And maybe someday she'll remember some of us on All Saints' Day, and she'll be inspired. You know, we are in the midst of a cloud of witnesses. And they are as stunning as the silhouette of those changing maple and alder trees. We are in the midst of a love that never, ever dies, despite the physical separation. We are in the midst of the ultimate will that gives us the strength to walk through valleys, to continue walking and to not fear, to live a life that is full. We're in the midst of a transforming time where we really can do to others as we would like them to do to us. This is a thinning time. See it. Experience it. Talk about it. Give from an intent that is deepening your faith. Know that God is here. And when you know that, it becomes a lot easier to cast fear aside. I know that God's kingdom is coming to earth just as it is in heaven. My favorite saint, St. Julian of Norwich, once said, "I am telling you, let the winter come and go. All shall be well. All shall be well. All shall be well again. I know."